I've been married for 20 years now. We don't have any kids, but we're a loving couple, and our reputation as a lovey-dovey pair is widely known within the company where I work. This is largely because I often boast about my good relationship with Emily, whether it's at a drinking gathering or elsewhere. One day, I was at a nearby pub invited by a junior colleague. "Could you lend me your ear for some advice?" he asked. I was usually approached with such requests, often about how to improve a deteriorating marital relationship. The topics of consultation varied widely from trivial issues to more serious ones. I was approached for advice by a male colleague who had once faced a marriage crisis. He had heard about the good relationship between my wife and me. Although I didn't think I gave any significant advice, that colleague managed to avoid divorce and credited me for it. Since then, for some reason, I started receiving more and more requests for advice on marital matters. A healthy marital relationship is an essential factor in enhancing productivity at the company. Given my position as the HR manager, I couldn't ignore such consultations. Depending on the content of the consultations, there were times when I couldn't help but wonder why someone would ask about certain things. However, when my colleagues come to me for advice, they all have a serious look on their faces. That's why I always take these discussions seriously and engage with my colleagues honestly. As a reference, I sometimes consult with Emily for insights from a female perspective. People often say that after 20 years of marriage, couples stop communicating, but that doesn't apply to us. So I never thought I would end up facing a divorce crisis. It happened one day when, as usual, I had received a consultation regarding marital issues and came home a little late. It was around 9 p.m., but all the lights in the house were off. I called out to Emily as I opened the front door, but there was no response. Emily, a full-time homemaker, rarely left the house at the time I returned. I remembered that she had mentioned having a dinner gathering with her college friends that day, but she had said she would be back by 8 p.m. Is the inside of an empty house always this quiet? I thought to myself as I ventured into the living room. When I turned on the lights, Emily was indeed nowhere to be found. That's when I noticed a piece of paper placed on the table. As I read the message written on it, I was shocked. "Thank you for everything. Get along well with that person." It was written. It was a message indicating our breakup. That person undoubtedly referred to another woman. It was apparent that I was suspected of infidelity. However, I had no idea who that person could be. I felt uneasy, but I decided to call Emily. No matter how many times I called, Emily didn't answer, and it didn't go to voicemail. I reluctantly sent a message through WhatsApp, but it remained unread for a long time. I also sent emails, but there was no reply. In desperation, I decided to call Emily's family home. My call, which was a rare occurrence, seemed to surprise my mother-in-law. "Is something wrong, Matt?" From the tone of her voice, I had a feeling Emily wasn't at her parents' house. I had assumed she had returned there. If Emily wasn't at her parents' house, I hadn't thought about how to explain the reason for my call. "Oh no, it's just that Emily was undecided about what to get for Mother's Day, so I thought I could ask you secretly without letting her know." I couldn't help but blurt out those words. However, I felt the awkwardness in that makeshift and cramped excuse. "We'll still think it over together, after all." Without waiting to hear my mother-in-law's response, I hastily hung up the phone. Emily didn't come back the next day either, not a single call or message from her. With no clues about Emily's whereabouts, I spent the entire day feeling restless and anxious. It was the evening of the second day since Emily had disappeared. The doorbell rang, and the sound echoed through the quiet house. I rushed to the doorbell monitor, thinking Emily had returned. I was surprised. The person on the monitor was my mother-in-law. "I couldn't help but worry about the way you sounded on the phone," she said. Realizing that there was no use in trying to deceive her, I showed my mother-in-law the message Emily had left behind. As soon as she saw it, her expression turned stern. Moreover, she gave me a suspicious look. I explained calmly that I had no idea about the contents of the message. However, my mother-in-law didn't seem convinced. Her expression remained stern. In the end, her doubts about me were unresolved, and she left. Since Emily's disappearance, I have thought repeatedly about what the message meant. I still had no clue as to what it was referring to. After much contemplation, I decided to visit the police station and file a missing person report. However, the police officer I spoke to didn't take me seriously. Even when I persisted, the officer seemed annoyed and asked, "Have there been any strange changes in your wife's behavior recently? For example, any signs of another man?" This unexpected question caught me off guard. And in a fit of anger, I retorted, "There's no way something like that would happen with Emily." However, the officer, who had likely dealt with such attitudes from concerned spouses before, said to me without changing his expression, "I will accept the missing person report for now." I couldn't help but feel that his response was mechanical and that they weren't genuinely interested in finding Emily. As I left the police station and returned home, I couldn't shake off the word cheating that the officer had mentioned. I reflected on Emily's recent behavior, but no matter how I thought about it, I couldn't find any suspicious actions on her part. For days after Emily disappeared, I was awakened by the sound of the doorbell. I had been sleeping in the living room instead of the bedroom since Emily's disappearance, ready to respond to any communication. I was taken aback as I looked at the monitor. It was my mother-in-law who appeared on the screen. I hastily opened the front door. My mother-in-law stood there with a stern expression. I prepared myself for a scolding from her. However, she uttered surprising words to me. "Emily is at my house right now." These unexpected words left me frozen. As I took a deep breath, I snapped back to reality and quickly got ready to leave the house. Just before I left, my mother-in-law said to me, "I suspected you. I'm sorry." It seems that she wanted to apologize in person rather than over the phone. Her expression had been stern because she likely felt sorry for me. As I rushed to Emily's parents' house, I contemplated the situation. The last time my mother-in-law visited my house, Emily was probably at her parents' place. Emily must have suddenly returned home and explained the situation to her. My mother-in-law had likely come to my house to hear the truth directly from me. She might have intended to interrogate me rigorously depending on the circumstances. However, seeing my flustered state at that moment, she might have doubted the accuracy of Emily's words and left without saying anything. Today she probably heard something from Emily and came to apologize. With these thoughts in mind, I hurried to Emily's parents' house. It was about a 20-minute walk from my house, but I wanted to confirm Emily's safety as soon as possible, so I ran. When I arrived, Emily saw my face, apologized, and burst into tears loudly. I felt at a loss for words, somewhat comically disoriented. Finally, when Emily regained her composure, she began speaking quietly. After hearing her story, I felt all the tension leave my body. The reason she had left home was a complete misunderstanding on Emily's part. On that day, it seemed that Emily saw me while she was on her way home after finishing dinner with her friends. I was walking while carrying a small child with a woman in her early 30s beside me. "They looked just like a real parent and child," Emily muttered. Hearing that, I remembered the day when Emily spotted me. On that day, I had received a consultation from a junior colleague and had a discussion with his wife in the evening after work. The colleague, who was still working, had 2 children who were about 2 years old. He didn't attend the discussion because he thought he might inadvertently butt in if he was there. The reason the couple's relationship began to deteriorate was that they started having heated arguments due to the wife's constant complaints about him coming home late from work every day. At that time, he was heavily involved in a significant project, especially during its final stages, which required him to work late into the night. When he returned home, he was always exhausted and had no patience to listen to his wife's words. Then one day his wife's patience reached its limit, and she started getting extremely angry with a furious tone. The employee thought it was bad, but it was already too late. No matter how many times he apologized, his wife seemed beyond consolation. "I can't take it anymore, please do something," the employee pleaded with me. That's when I took steps to repair their relationship. Of course, Emily did not know these things. Seeing us who appeared to be walking together amicably, Emily instinctively suspected me of cheating. In reality, it was a misunderstanding. We were just walking together to the bus terminal near the station. Emily discreetly followed the 3 of us. It seems her intuition turned into conviction when the child I was holding called me Daddy. Moreover, I replied with a cheerful "What's up?" I vividly remember how I couldn't help but feel delighted when a small child called me Daddy, and how I responded with a smile. The moment I answered with a smile, Emily said everything went dark before her eyes. Shocked, she left a message at home right after returning and then left the house. When she arrived at her parents' home, she tearfully recounted the day's events to her mother. After releasing all the pent-up emotions, Emily seemed to have found some relief and ended up falling asleep. When Emily woke up, her mother was no longer there. At that moment, her mother must have been on her way to my house. Today, Emily realized that it was all a misunderstanding. One day, at the suggestion of my mother-in-law, who said, "It's better to distract yourself a little," we went to the shopping center. Emily saw the woman and child she had seen in town before, accompanied by a man of the same age. Acting on impulse, Emily rushed towards them. Emily stood in front of the three of them, but couldn't find the words to say. The man initially showed a surprised expression when Emily suddenly appeared, but in the next moment he smiled. Emily was taken aback by his next words. "Oh, Mrs. Thomas, hello. We've always appreciated your help." "Why does this man know me?" Emily wondered. It seems the man explained. "Well, Mr. Thomas had a picture of you two on his smartphone's wallpaper. He proudly showed it off when we talked about our troubled relationship. But the other day, your child called him Daddy," Emily mentioned, and the woman beside the man had a puzzled look. Then, in the next moment, she apologetically explained, "I'm sorry. Our child calls any adult man Daddy." Someone overheard it and misunderstood. Upon hearing Emily's explanation, I couldn't help but burst out laughing. "You were always a bit clumsy, but this one is the funniest until now." When Emily was told that, she became embarrassed. Then she finally smiled. While looking at her smile for the first time in 4 days, I couldn't help but say, "Please continue showing me that smile from now on." In response, Emily nodded quietly.